I want to bring in Haras Rafiq. He's the managing director of the Quilliam Foundation, a think tank dedicated to reducing terrorism. Haras, thank you so much for being with us. I know that your group, and you in particular, has done a lot of work looking at self-starters, so-called self-starters, people who may be in countries with no direct ties to terror groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS. We don't know what happened here. We don't know if the Kouachi brothers, these suspects, had any direct contacts with Al-Qaeda or ISIS, but based on what you see, are there any signs?
Yeah, I think there are a number of indicators here and a number of things that have gone wrong. First of all, we know that one of the brothers was arrested and charged and convicted for trying to send people out to Iraq and Syria. To Iraq especially. We also know that, and we have known that both of these guys have probably been out to the Middle East and received some training. We don't know which organisations they've received the training from, but certainly we haven't got, or France hasn't got to the bottom of how they've failed in terms of combating the ideology that's driven these people to carry out what they've done. And also, they never really got to the bottom of two people that they knew were a danger and a menace to society, never got to formulate a strategy and implement a strategy on how they could actually de-radicalise and rehabilitate these guys. So yeah, certainly there are some very, very clear links to jihadi organisations. It's not quite clear whether it's Al-Qaeda or ISIL at this moment in time, but certainly we know that the ideological links are there, and probably they visited training camps. At least one of them, if not both of them, have visited training camps out of the Middle East. One
of the things about the ideology that it's so hard to wrap your mind around is the intellectual inconsistencies of the whole thing. I mean, these guys attack this magazine, and now more people in the world have seen what they think are the insults to Islam than would ever have seen it otherwise. You know what I mean? I mean, it's trying to wrap your mind around why they choose these sites to bomb, or they've bombed it before, to murder their, help me understand what they're thinking.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, these terrorists want to create fear and panic within our liberal, secular democracies. They want to show that they are able to fight back against what they perceive as a war against Islam. This particular target that they chose, there isn't really any intellectual thinking around what would happen after they selected this target, nor do they really care. Ultimately, they wanted to make a statement. I mean, if you look at how ironic and how sad this is, they wanted to carry, and they claimed they carried out this attack in the name of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and yet they killed a police officer who was actually named after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. There are a lot of inconsistencies. These people have been brainwashed and almost see things in a tunnel-like view, and there are these inconsistencies that we know that are there. And it's not really sane behaviour to some extent.
Haras, you talked a little bit about the failures to sort of see these two brothers over time. France has, 5 million plus Muslims, the vast majority, all living very peacefully and happily, or some living happily within French society. And the French intelligence service is known as having very good sources and being very connected to whatever militancy groups there are there. So how did they miss it?
Well, I'm not sure how they missed it, but there has to be two very clear parts to the strategy. The first one is that looking at the hard end, looking at people once they've expressed support for violence to some form or another, there have to be an intervention, either de-radicalisation or rehabilitation, or in the case of these two people, if they'd had the intelligence and they knew that they were going to carry out these attacks, there have to be arrests that have to be made very, very quickly. The other part of the strategy has to be the building of the resilience, so that when youngsters, you mentioned 5 million Muslims in France, when a very small minority of these youngsters are faced with the Islamist, Salafi, jihadi ideology and theology, they've got the resilience to push back. And this really needs to happen from mainstream society. I think France has a whole problem on trying to understand what do they do with religion and faith. To many of these people, to many Muslims, their faith is very, very important, and they need to be able to figure out a way on how they can actually help the society at large differentiate between the faith Islam and the political ideology that is Islamism, which is a totalitarian, fascist ideology that needs the same response that fascism and communism and racism and other totalitarian ideologies receive from France and from the rest of us.
Haras Rafiq, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Appreciate it.